I always thought blood was thicker than water, until a school nurse looked at my daughter's chart and said, "This blood type doesn't match either parent." At first, it didn't register. I smiled politely, chalked it up to a clerical error, or maybe some kind of fluke. Olivia and I had been married over a decade, and we had 2 kids who meant the world to me. Ava was 8, already asking questions about science and stars. Mason, 6, was wild and funny, always making up songs about whatever crossed his path. They had Olivia's sharp chin and my eyes. Or so I thought. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the nurse's words in my head, no matter how much I tried to drown them out with work, TV, even meaningless small talk with Olivia. It was like a splinter in my brain, small, but impossible to ignore. I worked in logistics, so my mind naturally sought patterns, inconsistencies, red flags. And that comment, it wasn't going away. By the end of the week, I had ordered a DNA test online. Just one for Ava at first. It felt wrong, even as I was swabbing her cheek while she laughed at cartoons, unaware. But something inside me whispered that it was necessary. A protective instinct, maybe. Or the beginning of a truth I didn't want to face. When the results came back, I stared at the screen for almost an hour. Ava wasn't mine. Not a partial mismatch. Not a lab error. A full, clinical, soul-puncturing not mine. There's no handbook for what to do when you find out the little girl who calls you daddy shares nothing of your blood. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was silence. That eerie, numbing stillness that settles over you when the world flips on its head. I stared at her framed school photo on my desk, the same crooked smile, the messy bangs, the missing front tooth. She was still mine in every way that mattered. Except the only way that legally did. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened another browser tab and ordered a second test. This time for Mason. 2 weeks later, the truth arrived in another digital gut punch. Not mine either. Both kids. Neither biologically mine. 11 years of marriage. 1,000 bedtime stories. Skinned knees. Soccer practices. Birthday candles. And none of it built on blood. I sat in my car for hours that night, parked outside the same house I paid the mortgage on, watching the porch light flicker. Inside, Olivia was probably brushing Mason's teeth, or scrolling her phone in bed, oblivious to the fact that her entire house of cards was about to be exposed. But I didn't go in with a confrontation. No shouting, no tears. Something in me had shifted. The Jordan from before, the trusting, loyal family man, was gone. What replaced him wasn't rage. It was clarity. Cold, patient, dangerous clarity. I started collecting. Not just DNA results, but patterns. Receipts. Her phone records. She'd been clever, or thought she had. Most affairs leave footprints if you know where to look. Hotel charges that didn't match any known family trips. Gym visits that never lined up with any changes in her schedule or appearance. A few credit card charges under businesses I didn't recognize, all in the same part of town. I knew better than to confront her without a full arsenal. She'd lie. She was good at it. Olivia was a master of the mask, smiling in public, making school cupcakes, organizing PTA events. She played the part of the perfect suburban wife like she had a script. But I had started to see the cracks. The convenient forgetfulness. The way she turned defensive if I asked too many questions. The time she said Mason had her chin, when I remembered Mason's baby photos didn't look like either of us. I thought the betrayal would break me. I expected it to come with rage, tears, something cinematic. But it came like a quiet, methodical storm. I began moving my paychecks into a different account. Took pictures of every family document, birth certificates, marriage license, even the kids' immunization records. There was no plan yet, just preparation. The same way I packed a go bag when we had newborns, just in case. Now I was packing one for the truth. She was still kissing me goodbye in the morning. Still texting about groceries. Still playing the role. And I played mine. I picked up Mason from karate. I helped Ava with her science project. I smiled at Olivia's parents when they came over for dinner, knowing full well that their daughter had lied to me every single day for over a decade. There's something terrifying about how easy it was for her to pretend. To laugh with me in the kitchen. To lie beside me at night. To call me, babe, in one breath and carry another man's children in her body. But I wasn't going to give her the meltdown she probably expected. I wasn't going to be the angry husband who loses everything in a fit of rage. No. I was going to be something she didn't see coming, calculated, composed, and meticulous. I realized something during those long nights when sleep wouldn't come. I might not be their biological father, but I was the only father they ever had. And Olivia? She might have stolen my bloodline, but she wasn't going to steal my dignity. So I waited. And while she lived in ignorance, I built my case. Piece by piece. Lie by lie. This wasn't going to end with shouting in the kitchen. It was going to end with silence in a courtroom. And the truth echoing louder than any scream ever could. The thing about discovering betrayal is that once the first thread unravels, the rest comes undone like it's been waiting. That DNA test didn't just tell me I wasn't their father, it lit a fuse. I started pulling at every stitch of our life together, and what came loose was a whole other version of Olivia I'd never known existed. It started with the phone records. I'd never once looked. 11 years, and I never had a reason to. But now, with clarity hardening inside me like stone, I combed through every call, every message, every month. Patterns emerged. A recurring number, most active during the times I was traveling for work. Late night calls. Early morning texts. Always short. Always around the time I was gone. That number was registered to a Brandon Hale. Didn't take much digging to find out who he was. A personal trainer, local gym, all smiles and tan skin. He showed up in a few of Olivia's old social media posts. Nothing too obvious, he was just the guy who helped her get back in shape after 2 kids. But once I saw his face, I noticed something else. Mason's grin. That same little smirk, slightly crooked, dimple on the left. The resemblance made me physically sick. From there, it was like looking through a dirty window that someone suddenly wiped clean. The hotel receipts matched dates I was at conferences. Olivia always said she needed a weekend to reset, or would take the kids to her sister's, except her sister, when I checked, had posted vacation photos from the Bahamas during one of those very weekends. There were charges at restaurants I'd never been to, spas I never knew she visited, even a charge for a concert I remembered her saying she couldn't go to because of a migraine. She was there. With him. But the part that made my stomach flip wasn't a receipt. It was a truck. A rusted Ford F-150 I used to drive everywhere until Olivia insisted it was beyond saving. She'd said it broke down too often, that repairs would cost more than it was worth. Said she'd take care of getting it to the scrapyard while I was at work. That was 2 years ago. One afternoon, I saw it parked in the lot behind a smoothie bar on the east side of town. Same dent in the fender. Same faded bumper sticker. Except now, Brandon was climbing into the driver's seat, wearing the same smug expression he wore in every Instagram photo. I remember just sitting in my car across the lot, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. There wasn't rage, not yet. It was something colder. Something focused. Olivia hadn't just lied. She'd recycled my life. Stripped it for parts and handed them to someone else. When I started asking small, casual questions at home, nothing obvious, just nudges, she was ready with answers. But they were just polished lies. She played confused, acted hurt, twisted everything until suddenly I was the one being unreasonable. She said I was too distant. That my job made me distracted. That maybe I was seeing shadows where there weren't any. The gaslighting was surgical. She'd always been good at flipping things. It used to be charming, until I realized how often it had been used to cover something up. Every time she deflected, every time she said I was being too sensitive, it was like watching someone paint over a crack in the wall and hoping you wouldn't notice the damage underneath. But I noticed. I noticed everything. So I stopped asking. I smiled when I needed to. Nodded along. I let her believe she was still fooling me. Because behind the scenes, I was changing everything. First, the will. She'd always been my beneficiary, and I'd never thought twice about it. But now, everything changed. I replaced her with my brother, made sure that if anything happened to me, not a single cent went her way. Then came the accounts. I opened a new one at a separate bank, funneled most of my savings into it over the course of a few weeks. Enough that it wouldn't raise suspicion right away, but steady enough that I'd secured myself a financial escape route. I pulled our joint credit history. Reviewed the mortgage. Made copies of every birth certificate, tax document, and medical record. At night, while Olivia was in the bath or scrolling her phone beside me in bed, I'd send files to a secure drive she didn't know existed. There were moments I caught myself staring at her, wondering how long she'd been capable of this. How she could smile at me over dinner, tell me she loved me, knowing full well she was handing our life over to another man piece by piece. The Olivia I married wasn't perfect, but she was honest, or at least she made me believe she was. And I had loved her. Deeply. Blindly. That was the part that haunted me most. Not that she cheated. Not even that the kids weren't mine. But that I'd been sleeping beside a stranger for years and hadn't seen it. That I'd built my life around a woman who, in the quiet spaces I never looked, had erased me. The loss of identity was staggering. Who was I, if not their dad? If not her husband? What did my life stand for if the foundation was all fabrication? But what Olivia hadn't counted on was that I wouldn't fall apart. She expected a meltdown. Maybe a furious confrontation. A messy, impulsive breakdown she could twist into proof that I was unstable or dangerous. But I didn't give her that. I was polite. Predictable. Emotionally distant, sure, but not in a way that raised alarms. Just enough to make her think she was winning. Let her laugh with Brandon. Let her think she'd buried the truth deep enough. Because I wasn't just setting the stage. I was writing the ending. And she wouldn't see it coming. There's something surreal about calm before a storm you started. The morning sun poured through the kitchen windows, warm and golden, like it hadn't gotten the memo. Olivia flitted from counter to table, arranging cut fruit and heating quiche. She was in full presentation mode, lipstick perfect, apron tied neatly, smiling that smile she wore when she wanted to impress an audience. It was Mother's Day, and our house looked like a Hallmark ad. Her parents arrived first, arms full of flowers and cards. My folks came next, slightly overdressed as usual, beaming with pride. A couple of close friends dropped by, ones who had seen us grow from newlyweds to tired but happy parents. The brunch table was set. Mimosas were flowing. Olivia was radiant, soaking in the praise and attention. She played the part of the beloved matriarch flawlessly. I played mine, too, loving husband, proud father, attentive host. I refilled drinks, handed out napkins, laughed at jokes that didn't land. No one suspected a thing. I had spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. Every detail choreographed. Every piece of evidence triple-checked. The documents were wrapped in floral paper, tied with a delicate white ribbon. Olivia thought it was a surprise bouquet. In a way, it was. After the meal, just as coffee and pastries hit the table, I handed her the package. Her eyes lit up, smug and curious, her expectations set on roses or some handwritten tribute. Instead, She unwrapped silence. Inside the folder, 2 DNA reports, both official, both undeniable. A notarized affidavit confirming chain of custody. Printouts of hotel bills, text message logs, and photos, Olivia and Brandon, arms wrapped around each other at a concert she told me she'd missed due to a migraine. One at a resort. One at a restaurant we had gone to for our 10th anniversary. Just 2 months later, she'd gone back with him. She froze, eyes scanning the first page, face draining of color. The room didn't notice at first. Small talk continued. Cups clinked. Until she dropped the folder onto the table and the photos spilled out. Everything stopped. I stood, heart steady, voice clear. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again, not the version she painted me into, but the man she underestimated. I looked at every face around that table, watching the confusion twist into understanding. My words were few, rehearsed, and final. This wasn't anger. This wasn't vengeance. It was release. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply presented the truth. And when I told them that neither Ava nor Mason were biologically mine, and that Olivia had known all along, the room fell into a silence so thick it felt like gravity itself had shifted. Then came the denial. Olivia's instinct kicked in, her voice cracking into a frantic defense. She reached for excuses, tried to discredit the tests, the evidence, anything to regain control of the narrative. But I had anticipated this. As she scrambled, people reached for the napkins I had set out at each plate. Folded neatly inside each one was a printed copy of the full report. No one said a word. They didn't need to. Her father stared at the table, unmoving. Her mother covered her mouth with a trembling hand. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears as she clutched my arm, not out of sadness, but something deeper, grief, pride, and heartbreak all rolled into one. One friend excused himself from the table. Another just shook his head, staring at Olivia like she was a stranger. The mask she wore, the perfect wife, the doting mother, shattered. What was left underneath was exposed and unrecognizable. Her voice shrank, her posture wilted. Every lie she'd maintained, every layer she'd built to preserve the illusion of our marriage, came apart like wet paper in front of everyone who once loved her. She didn't just lose credibility. She lost the room. And I felt weightless. The pain I'd carried, the confusion, the shame, burned away in that moment. This wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. I wasn't the fool anymore. I wasn't the oblivious husband, blindly loving someone who built a second life while I raised someone else's kids. That day, I stopped mourning what I thought I had. I stopped blaming myself. Olivia's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my failures. It was a choice she made over and over again. And I had finally chosen myself. After the silence came the aftermath. No one rushed to defend her. No one coddled her version of events. She sat, surrounded by the wreckage she caused, while the people who once celebrated her stared like they were seeing her for the first time, and not liking what they saw. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw her out. I just needed her to sit in the truth, finally visible to everyone she'd fooled. As guests filtered out, few offered her more than a nod. Some couldn't even look at her. Her mother pulled me aside, trembling, and apologized. I didn't answer. What could I say? She'd raised the woman who did this. When I finally closed the door behind the last person, Olivia just stood in the middle of the living room, arms limp at her sides, surrounded by fragments of her double life. I didn't comfort her. I didn't say a word. I walked past her, picked up the empty mimosa glass she left on the coffee table, and started cleaning up. Because the real mess, that was hers to live in now. If the Mother's Day reveal was the explosion, what followed was the aftershock, the slow, grinding collapse of everything Olivia had built on lies. I didn't rush. I didn't scream. I filed the papers quietly, like a man finishing a long, painful job that had to be done. My lawyer, a calm but lethal woman named Tess, handled the filing with surgical precision. Full custody. Fraud. Emotional distress. Financial deception. Olivia was caught completely off guard. For once, she had no script. No performance. She wasn't ready for the man she thought she knew to strike with such control. I watched her eyes flick across the custody request like she didn't understand the words. But I understood perfectly. This wasn't vengeance. It was clarity finally turned into action. She had forged the paternity documents at the hospital. I'd found that too, small inconsistencies in the birth registration paperwork, signatures that didn't match, dates that didn't line up. Tess brought in a forensic document analyst, and they confirmed what I suspected. She had signed my name after the fact. A calculated decision, not a mistake. The legal equivalent of slipping a leash around my neck. We had evidence. We had motive. And now we had momentum. In court, she tried to play the victim. Claimed I had grown distant, that I was too consumed with work, too emotionally unavailable. She leaned on pity, on appearance, on the same charm that had let her skate through so many situations untouched. But it unraveled fast. The school nurse testified first, calm, professional, detailing the routine health screening that triggered it all. She explained the discovery of Ava's blood type and how it was biologically impossible for me to be the father. It was subtle, scientific, and devastating. Then came Brandon's ex. Tess found her after a single social media post hinted at overlap. They had been together for 2 years, the same 2 years Olivia claimed she was just focused on wellness. The woman didn't hold back. She spoke clearly, with the kind of rage only someone intimately betrayed could channel. She told the court how Olivia pursued Brandon while still wearing her wedding ring, how she used the kids as leverage, how she bragged about never needing her husband to find out. There was no coming back from that. By the end of that week, Olivia's image was in shreds. The woman who once controlled every room with ease now sat small and silent behind her lawyer, makeup hiding the cracks but not the collapse. And outside that courtroom, her world was falling apart even faster. Her employer, a local non-profit, quietly removed her from their board. She had been their polished face, presentable, clean-cut, the model wife and mother. Once word got out about the fraud and the courtroom drama, she became radioactive. Donations dropped. Rumors swirled. They let her go. Brandon? He vanished. Whether out of shame or sheer self-preservation, he ghosted. No goodbye. No explanations. One day he was still liking her gym selfies, the next, his social media was wiped, and Olivia's calls went unanswered. It was poetic, in a way. The man she risked everything for didn't even have the decency to stand beside her when it all crashed down. She moved into a hotel. At first, she tried to spin it like a temporary reset, but everyone knew. Her parents stopped answering her calls. Her friends stopped inviting her out. She'd become a walking cautionary tale. That woman. The one who lied about her kids. The one who got caught. Meanwhile, I moved differently. Quietly. With purpose. I sold the house. Didn't even offer it to her. She had no legal claim left, and I wasn't about to leave a shrine to betrayal behind. The proceeds went into a trust account for Ava and Mason, whether they were mine or not. I wasn't going to punish them for being born into the mess Olivia created. They deserved a future untainted by her mistakes. I transferred everything to a smaller city, closer to my brother and his family. New place. New start. I took a different position at work, still in logistics but with more flexibility. Less travel. More time to breathe. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for me again, not walking on eggshells inside someone else's fantasy. There were moments I questioned myself. Moments where I looked at Ava's old art projects or Mason's toy cars and felt like I'd been robbed of something I couldn't even name. But those moments passed. Because what I'd really lost was an illusion. The shame I carried, the guilt, the confusion, the constant feeling that I was never quite enough, wasn't mine to hold anymore. Olivia had engineered a world where I doubted myself so she wouldn't have to explain her choices. She lied so well, for so long, that I began to believe maybe I was the problem. But now I knew better. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It wasn't about destruction. It was about truth. About planting my feet on solid ground for the first time in years and refusing to be gaslit into silence. Olivia's spiral was hers to own. I didn't need to make it worse. I didn't need to gloat. I just needed to walk away with my dignity intact, my truth proven, and my future reclaimed. And that's exactly what I did. There's a strange peace that comes after the storm, not in the sense of celebration, but in the kind of silence that lets you actually hear yourself again. In the months after the dust settled, I started filling in the space left behind. Not with noise. Not with someone new. But with things that made me feel real again. First came the dog. A scrappy rescue mutt with a missing ear and the saddest eyes I'd ever seen. They told me he'd been abandoned twice. Figured we had that in common. I named him Cooper. He didn't need pedigree to earn loyalty, just a steady hand and quiet company. He slept at the foot of my bed every night, like he knew what it meant to feel disposable and finally wanted. Then came the mentoring. I signed up at a local youth center after seeing a flyer pinned to the bulletin board at a coffee shop. I didn't want to talk about my past. I wasn't trying to turn pain into a platform. But something in me needed to be useful, to show up for someone who maybe didn't have a dad at home, or a home at all. Every Thursday night, I sat with teenage boys who were just trying to find their footing, pretending to be fine. I didn't preach. I just listened. And sometimes, that was enough. I built a life in quiet, intentional ways. I kept to myself mostly, but I laughed more. Slept better. My mind no longer spun in loops about what-ifs and how could she's. The nights felt softer. My reflection didn't look like a ghost anymore. It was in the middle of this calm that I saw him. Brandon. It had been nearly a year since Mother's Day. I was picking up a new leash for Cooper when I caught sight of him behind the register of a discount pet supply store. Thinner now. Eyes sunken. Hair not as perfectly styled. That glowing confidence he once carried like a badge had dimmed into something, tired. He didn't notice me at first. He was scanning a barcode, muttering something to himself. But when he looked up, he froze. For a second, I saw panic, a flash of guilt or shame, maybe both. And I just stared. Not out of anger. Not out of contempt. Just observation. I nodded once. Not a greeting. Not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Then turned and walked out without another word. No confrontation. No clever parting shot. Just me, Cooper, and a quiet exit. He didn't deserve a scene. He wasn't worth one. Some time after that, word got around that Olivia was on the brink of eviction. She'd burned every bridge she had, and no amount of carefully curated social posts could erase the public fallout of the trial. The nonprofit world had blacklisted her. Even her parents, from what I'd heard, were keeping their distance. She'd started a GoFundMe under the guise of temporary hardship, trying to spin it as an unfair job market and unexpected legal expenses. I didn't plan to do anything. I had moved on. But one night, after Cooper fell asleep with his head in my lap and the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge, I opened the link. The campaign was crawling toward its goal. A few anonymous donations. Some pity comments. I clicked donate. Not much. Just enough to get her over the hump. I left a message. Nothing spiteful. Just 6 words and a ghost she couldn't delete. The real father would have helped. No name. No fanfare. Just the quiet reminder that not all revenge needs an audience. Sometimes, the best revenge is compassion that costs you nothing but burns them anyway. I didn't check the page again. Instead, I got up early the next morning, laced my boots, and took Cooper to the park. It was the kind of crisp day that smelled like fresh beginnings, grass still wet, sun just peeking over the trees. The world didn't feel heavy anymore. I watched families walk by. Some with toddlers on scooters. Some with strollers. I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I just watched. There was a time when I thought the only version of happiness was the one Olivia and I pretended to have. I clung to it like a lifeline, too afraid to admit that love built on lies is just another kind of prison. But now I understood that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come in fireworks or final words shouted through a slammed door. It comes in quiet moments. In deep breaths. In morning walks with a dog who never lies to you. I sat on a bench beneath a maple tree, Cooper curled up beside me, the sun finally warming the back of my neck. It wasn't the life I expected. It was better. Turns out blood isn't thicker than truth. And sometimes, the best thing a man can do, is walk away without burning the place down. Just make sure she knows you took the matches.